As I lay in the hospital bed after the car accident, they thought I was asleep as they started talking without any concern. They began discussing the truth about the accident. Eventually, in a mocking voice, one of them said, "Oh, I've always wanted to say this. I'm gonna divorce you and marry Lynn." Then I would say, "Get out because I'm gonna be Dad's wife." Such a clueless woman. A fiery anger began to rise within me, even though I could barely move. After some time, when I was able to get up, the two of them came to me again and demanded the company. "Sure, but are you sure it's okay? Because that person." "Huh? What are you trying to say? Speak clearly. I've always hated that about you." "That's right, I hate you now too." "Fine, but are you sure it's okay? Because that person has already been fired from our company." "My name is Yvonne Smith. I run a furniture trading company, and I'm 57 years old. These days, I live with my husband Ken, who is 7 years younger than me. We have a daughter named Lynn, but since she moved out and became independent 10 years ago, it's just been the two of us." When Lynn left, Ken had a dissatisfied look on his face and said, "It's gonna be lonely." On the other hand, Lynn had a slightly sarcastic smile and said, "Finally, it's just you two. I'll get out of your way." At the time, I thought Lynn was being considerate of me. I believed that Ken, my second husband who is 7 years younger, and I could finally be alone together. But later, I realized how naive I had been. Now, after 18 years of marriage, I'm ready to leave Ken. The reason lies with him and Lynn. I met Ken 20 years ago when I was 37. He was 30 at the time, working as a salesperson for a trading company we dealt with. I had just lost my previous husband in a sudden accident. I was desperate, with Lynn still in elementary school. Back then, the company my previous husband and I started had just begun to take off. This company had been our dream since our college days. It was a tragedy that struck just when I thought a joyful future was opening up. I didn't have time to mourn. To keep the small company that was our shared dream from collapsing, I worked twice as hard, maybe even more, running around every day. Naturally, I couldn't take proper care of Lynn. Lynn started to avoid me gradually. I should have been sharing her grief over losing her father, but instead, I was never home because of work. I begged my parents to take care of Lynn. Although we weren't struggling financially, Lynn's heart seemed to be growing more troubled. Honestly, I have a lot to reflect on there. But my mind was filled with the thought that it would be a disgrace to my late husband if I let the company fail. I naively thought that Lynn would understand one day. During those days consumed by work, Ken started making aggressive advances toward me. At first, I thought he was joking. He is 7 years younger. From my perspective at the time, he was not a potential romantic partner. However, Ken began to approach me in various ways, especially noticing when I was tired, and would say kind words to show his concern for my well-being. Then he said he wanted to transfer to my company. I did wonder what his motive was. After all, I was the CEO. I suspected he might be aiming for the company that had just started to get on track. But Ken didn't mention anything about the company or money as his reason for transferring. Instead, he talked about my busyness and my neglected daughter. Ken, who was perceptive about details, must have sensed from our conversations that my relationship with Lynn was strained. Around this time, I had a rare outing with Lynn for shopping. Lynn was in grade 6 at the time. She was already in her rebellious phase and seemed reluctant to go out with me. Even so, she understood that she couldn't get what she wanted without me, who held the wallet. There were clothes, games, and other things she wanted, most of which were news to me. I was surprised by how much I had missed while being preoccupied with work and neglecting my daughter. On the other hand, I was shocked to realize that Lynn had somehow learned how to use me to get what she wanted. While I was thinking about that, I happened to meet Ken. Whether it was really a coincidence, I don't know anymore. Anyway, from that day on, the three of us started spending more time together. Ken often invited us out, and sometimes he even took Lynn out to my place. Watching him, my feelings for Ken kept growing. Of course, I loved my late husband. But I guess I was lonely too. As a mother, I thought such fleeting feelings were wrong. However, Lynn suggested that I should marry Ken. I was surprised. I knew I was attracted to him, but I hadn't thought about remarriage at all. But when Lynn said that, I thought maybe she needed a father. Ken wants to marry you, Mom. Lynn wouldn't stop once she started talking, and one day she even asked Ken to be her new dad. It was Ken who told me about Lynn's words. I couldn't quite believe Ken's happiness. But then Ken said, "I want to build a new family with Lynn too." With that, I agreed to remarry. However, it took me a long time to understand the true meaning of those words. My parents and my late husband's family had mixed reactions, but the fact that Lynn was eager made a big difference, and we started our life as a family of 3. 8 years into our marriage, Lynn, who was now a college student, said she wanted to move out and live on her own. She didn't have any particular problem with our life at home. She just said that if she stayed, she would keep relying on Dad. At that time, Ken was a member of my company, but he was also the homemaker for our family. Lynn and Ken had a good relationship from the beginning. Ken, being attentive, would take the lead in doing housework with Lynn. Shopping, cooking, cleaning, everything. He even helped her study during exam periods, so I honestly left Lynn in Ken's care. Given their relationship, I thought Ken would oppose Lynn living alone, but surprisingly, he was all for it and enthusiastically helped her find a good place. At that time, Ken and Lynn seemed more like parent and child than Lynn and I did. On the other hand, my relationship with Lynn kept deteriorating over the years. For instance, I sometimes hear that teenage girls don't want to do laundry with their dads. But in our house, that behavior was directed at me. Lynn's gaze towards me felt like she was looking at something dirty. It wasn't exactly confrontational, but it was clearly hostile. I knew I had neglected her, but I wondered if I had done something to be hated that much. However, I don't have many memories of my late husband paying attention to Lynn either. While I'm a workaholic now, my late husband was even more so. Moreover, he wasn't physically strong, and I don't remember him playing with Lynn much. Sometimes I wonder if that's why she's not so attached to him. And maybe, because I'm her mother, she resents me. A mother should be the one to care for her the most. Perhaps that's why she rebelled against me. As for Ken, he might have become attached to him because he's a dependable father figure, different from her late father and me. At least, that's how it seemed to me. But behind the scenes, something was definitely happening. That something was revealed to me on a day when I went to work despite feeling unwell since the morning. At that time, Ken was half an employee and half the homemaker for our family. But during work hours, he would handle things I couldn't, like going shopping or taking care of household matters. So, when I came home that day, I wanted to rely on Ken, who should have been there. However, at the front door, I saw something unexpected. Lynn's jacket was there. I thought, she came home for a change. With a headache, I moved my feet gently as I walked, but my sensitive ears caught some unfamiliar sounds inside the house. No, it was more like strange voices. A high-pitched, coquettish voice. Why am I hearing that kind of voice? Feeling both irritated and nauseous, I held my aching head and moved toward the source of the voice. But as the voice grew louder, I became scared. The voice was coming from Lynn's room. Could there be an intruder? The thought gave me chills. Hearing voices from a room that should be empty felt like something out of a horror movie. Any movement made my head throb. Even so, I edged closer to Lynn's room and heard familiar sounds of a man and woman together. Could Lynn have brought a man into this house? Blood rushed to my head, intensifying the throbbing pain. Because of the pain, I wondered if I even had the right to say anything to her. I've neglected her, and now I'm trying to act like a concerned mother? While I hesitated, "Lynn, you really are the best." Familiar voices. Ken and Lynn? Oh, stop it. Can't you say something different? Or did that line work on Mom? Mom? Is she talking about me? What does she mean? I tried to focus. I've always said it. How many times do I have to tell you? You're always my number one, Lynn. I've said that from the start. That's what a real dad should be like. Stop saying that. How many times do I have to tell you? You're always my true love, not that old hag. Then came a burst of light, tinkling laughter. Oh, my head hurts. Really, how many times do I have to say it to make you happy, my princess? As many times as it takes. You can never say it enough. Tell me anytime, anywhere, Daddy. The pain in my head worsened, and a chill ran down my spine. My legs shook, and I almost collapsed. What should I have done in that situation? Should I have burst in and slapped them both? No, I couldn't do anything at that moment. All I wanted was to escape. I quietly left the house, stifling my nausea, drove desperately, and checked into a random hotel. As I struggled with headaches and nightmares, I thought. From the way they were talking, it was clear that the people together were my daughter, Lynn, and my husband, Ken. The voices and the content of the conversation left no doubt, yet what they were doing was like that of a man and a woman. Was it my fault for not paying enough attention to Lynn? Or was it a mistake to leave Lynn in Ken's care? No, if it was from the start, that means he had been targeting Lynn since she was in elementary school. And it seemed Lynn herself was willing from the beginning. When did their relationship start? How did I not notice until now? A few years ago, I could have easily accused Ken of a crime. But now, I can't blame them for their ages. Lynn is already an adult. Even so, why did I have to run away? That is my house. Why did I flee with such a sense of guilt? I couldn't understand myself. That was about 10 years ago. In the end, I've been running away from this problem ever since. The two of them seemed oddly happy. Maybe I should just leave it alone. Or perhaps it was a temporary lapse, and young Lynn would eventually be attracted to a man her own age. My mind was racing with thoughts, and I couldn't come to a conclusion. And so, another 10 years passed. These past 10 years, maybe because I was turning a blind eye, but the two of them never showed any signs of anything. Ken, as an employee in the homemaker, never caused any problems. The thought that what I saw might have been a hallucination made me hesitate to act. Maybe I didn't want to think about it any further. But recently, an incident occurred. I was driving a car that had just returned from inspection, heading to visit a client for work. But as soon as I got on the highway, the car started acting strange. The brakes seemed to suddenly lose their grip. I thought I needed to stop the car and check immediately. But then, out of nowhere, the steering went haywire. In an instant, my car crashed into the right curb. The thought of what could have happened without the airbag is terrifying. The impact on my body was severe. So severe that I lost consciousness. The next time I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. "Are you okay?" A familiar voice hit my ears. It was Natalie, an old friend and our corporate lawyer. "A terrible thing has happened. But for now, just rest." If she said something terrible had happened, then it must have been true, I thought. At that time, my whole body was immobilized, and I was in so much pain that I couldn't react properly. For a while, I was consumed by pain and multiple surgeries, leaving me no room to think. Eventually, when I could finally start thinking about what had happened to me, those two showed up at the hospital. I found it odd that they came together. "She's sleeping, huh?" Ken muttered, clicking his tongue in a tone he never used around me. "Isn't that just perfect, Daddy?" Lynn said in a syrupy voice. They continued talking in the same manner as before. Oh, I wanted to sigh in exasperation, closing my eyes. So, they've been carrying on for 10 years? They've been deceiving me for a total of 18 years. Unable to move my body properly, I pretended to be asleep, deciding to let them keep talking. "This one has some bad luck, huh?" "That's right, Daddy. Even though we had Newman adjust the car perfectly. She's really stubborn, not getting into an accident as planned." "Adjust?" Newman is the skilled mechanic who always takes care of my car. I had just had it checked recently. "What does this mean?" I listened more intently. "Hey, Maybe the guy you ordered isn't that good after all. No way. He's bad at business, but as a mechanic, he's top-notch. In many ways. It was Ken who introduced me to Newman. They've known each other for a long time. We always took our cars to him for adjustments, and we were grateful for his excellent work. Since I travel a lot for work, my car is my lifeline. Trust is really important. She would never suspect that Newman messed with the car. The plan was for the car to stop suddenly, roll over, and catch fire, ending it all. Plan? What plan? Well, it's fine. When she gets out of here, we'll have another chance. Yeah. Even if it doesn't go that well, if her body is useless, it'll be my turn. Lynn giggled. Can't you say it'll be Daddy's turn? No way. Daddy, you don't do much at the company. Well, I can't help that. A sharp pain hit my chest. I was the one who made him into that. But their next words shocked me. Honestly, even as a homemaker, you don't do much. As long as she doesn't notice, it's fine. Doesn't notice? What are they talking about? She never notices anything. Not even that we've been hiring a housekeeper. I've always wanted to say, I'm divorcing you and marrying Lynn. Then I'd say, I'm becoming Daddy's wife, so get out. Ha, what a clueless woman. Lynn laughed, urging Ken to leave. They thought I'd been sleeping all along. After confirming they were gone, I decided to contact Natalie. A week later, Ken and Lynn showed up again. Even seeing that I was awake, they clung to each other without any shame. Serves you right. Driving around all the time, that's what you get. Lynn said, her blatant hostility almost making me show my anger. But I managed to hold it back. I needed to get them to say more. Lynn continued, seeing that I was silent. Well, this means you're retiring, right? Your body probably won't recover properly. Still silent, I saw a hint of irritation on her face. Silent treatment, huh? Whatever. You should just retire as CEO. Retirement? I never even thought about it. I answered clearly. What are you talking about all of a sudden? Didn't you come to visit me? It's like this, Lynn said, suddenly pressing herself against Ken. I'm saying that Daddy and I will take over your company. Huh? What kind of joke is this? I'm serious. She said, stepping forward proudly. You can't move your body anymore, right? So it's only natural that I, your daughter, should take over the company. Or maybe Daddy will. Either way, it's the same, right? That's right. Daddy has a right too. After all, he's still your husband. But I'll be right there beside him, just like always. I listened to her talk for a while. She had a quick tongue. But listening to her endlessly was getting annoying. Fine, but are you sure? Because that person. Huh? What are you trying to say? Speak clearly. I've always hated that about you. That's right, I hate you now too. I said quietly. Lynn looked startled. What did you just say? Sure, I didn't do anything about it, and that was my mistake. But it's too late now. If you want him, go ahead. Lynn, you've been an adult for a long time now. But are you sure? Because that man has already been fired from our company. Ken and Lynn looked shocked, like they had been hit with a brick. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. I said, picking up my phone and making a quick call. Natalie then entered the room as if on cue. Natalie was smart, having gone to law school and become a lawyer. I, on the other hand, got married and started running a company with my husband, and as the company grew, I needed a legal advisor and asked Natalie to fill that role. Natalie is a trusted friend and business partner. She handed Lynn a piece of paper. Lynn, you recently submitted this divorce filing on behalf of Yvonne. It has already been officially accepted, so unless Yvonne objects, the divorce from Ken is finalized. In other words, Natalie added, Ken is no longer related to Yvonne. The company and assets are all hers. Ken's face suddenly darkened, and he grabbed Lynn by the collar. Divorce filing? Why? How could you do that? But, if Daddy and I were going to get married, you had to divorce him first. So, I did it for him. I did it for Daddy. That's all. So why are you looking at me like that? Natalie chuckled at the sight of them. What's so funny, you? Lynn, you just admitted to committing forgery. That's a serious crime. It's beneficial for us, though. Beneficial? Lynn looked puzzled. I've been investigating. You two have been involved for a long time, haven't you? You knew? I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, please. I knew because you were talking about it right in front of me the other day. I was too exhausted to move, so I pretended to be asleep. I said, then handed the baton over to Natalie. Yes, after you two left, I started digging. It turns out, there were many things, not just forgery. What right did you have to snoop on us? I'm her husband. I'm her business partner. And since the divorce papers have already been submitted, you're no longer legally her husband. So, even if something happened to Yvonne, you wouldn't get a penny. Lynn seemed to finally grasp the gravity of her actions. She shoved Ken aside and stood in front of me, shouting. Wait. Even if Daddy isn't your husband anymore, I'm still your daughter. If something happens to you, I have a right to your inheritance. I sighed deeply. Unfortunately for you, if anything happens to me, you won't get a cent. I made sure of that in my will. You made a will? Of course. After hearing you two talk like that in front of me, why wouldn't I? I smiled. And it's not just that. I didn't want to believe it, but you two have been deceiving me for the past 10 years, I said. Lynn suddenly burst into laughter. Not just 10 years. You only got married because I was part of the deal. What? Ken's face turned pale. Wait. If it was 10 years ago, you were both adults. No, from the start, Daddy was after me, not you. You've let it slip, Ken. Natalie said brightly, her voice echoing in the room. If you were after Lynn, when did it start? When she was in elementary school. You've been targeting her since then? That's disgusting. Daddy has always loved me. He married this woman to be close to me. Lynn said, ignoring Ken's attempts to stop her. I see. So, when did your relationship turn romantic? That was when I was in 9th grade. Daddy was young and handsome. He still is, but he was even more so back then. He did whatever I wanted and taught me many things. Did you know that's a crime? Lynn shouted, her nostrils flaring in anger. A crime? It's true love. What are you talking about? Lynn, regardless of how you feel, it's a crime to be involved with a child. That's absolutely a crime. That doesn't matter now. The divorce is finalized, and we can get married. Natalie shook her head. I've been investigating. It's all over. Come in, please. At Natalie's signal, the police entered, along with another person. It was Newman, the auto mechanic. Why did you call the police? Ken's voice trembled. Newman stepped forward. I confessed everything. Stop it. I didn't want to do that job either. But you slapped me with cash, saying I needed money for my kids' tuition. You said all that? Yes, he confessed. A police officer confirmed. And we know about your plan. Ken turned pale, and Lynn ground her teeth in frustration. When I had asked Natalie to investigate them, the police were already suspicious. The car, which hadn't caught fire as planned, had clear evidence of tampering. During the on-site investigation, the police found many things suspicious. When they suspected the mechanic, Natalie met with the police and later came to me. I told them everything about Newman's involvement and Ken and Lynn's conversations. From there, the police moved quickly. They discreetly secured Newman, who then explained everything. Apparently, the auto repair company I'd been using had fallen on hard times in recent years. On top of that, they were struggling with rising tuition fees for their children. Ken took advantage of this. He paid a large sum of money to have my car tampered with. Since I drove a lot, I frequently took my car to Newman for inspections. During those visits, he manipulated the brake wear and set it up so the steering would fail randomly, like a time bomb. He was indeed a skilled mechanic to pull that off. I didn't want to do it, Newman said, covering his face with his hands. I've been working on that car for years. Cars are my passion. It felt like I was betraying my own. I had nightmares every night. Confessing clears my conscience. I'll return all the money. Even my kid said he didn't want to go to college with dirty money. Lynn muttered, "Useless man," under her breath. "What did you say?" Newman snapped, almost lunging at her. The police stepped in. "We need to talk to both of you." Then, unexpectedly, Lynn grabbed Ken's hand and bolted. Everyone froze for a moment, then the police, except the one holding Newman, ran after them. The sound of running echoed down the hospital hallway. I thought they'd be caught quickly. But Lynn was determined. She dashed to a car in the parking lot. "They're already outside," Natalie said, looking out the window. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from outside. "They crashed into the gate!" Natalie's voice rang in my ears. "That car didn't have airbags," Newman said, his face turning pale. He quickly realized it was Lynn's car that had crashed. She had chosen a small foreign car that she liked for its looks, not its safety features. And now, it had crashed into the hospital gate. Oh, more trouble. I muttered without thinking. I couldn't muster any sympathy for my daughter. Considering they had tried to kill me, I found myself thinking, what goes around comes around. Natalie narrated the scene as the police, rescue teams, and hospital staff rushed to the crash site. "So, what do you want to do? Should we nullify the divorce?" Natalie suddenly asked me. I couldn't help but laugh. "Let's leave it as is. It's actually a relief that they went ahead with it." Natalie and I laughed together. Later, I heard that both were taken to the hospital with serious injuries and then transferred to a police hospital once they were stable. It turned out that Lynn, in her reckless dash, had swerved sharply to avoid an oncoming bus, crashing into the gate. Lynn survived, but was left with a scar on her face and a serious spinal injury requiring long rehabilitation. Ken, on the other hand, had suffered severe injuries to his lower body, making it difficult for him to walk and rendering him impotent, or so the rumors said. Their attempt to kill me was a major factor, ensuring they would face prison time. They were already in the police hospital, but it would be a long time before they saw the outside world. And for Ken, this wasn't his only crime. Thanks to Lynn's loose tongue, charges for sexual offenses against minors and manipulating a child were added to his record. I visited Lynn once after that, but she showed no remorse. She glared at me through the acrylic barrier, her eyes full of hatred from her bandaged face. I don't know where things went wrong, but facing a daughter who tried to kill me, I had already shed my maternal feelings. Even if I ever gained freedom in the future, I don't think I could bring myself to do anything for Lynn. "Welcome back, Yvonne." When I showed up at the company after a long absence, the employees rushed to present me with celebratory flowers. "It must have been so hard for you," one of the longtime employees said, tearing up. There had been many articles in the media before my return, filled with truths and rumors alike. Within the company, there were also voices questioning my role as a mother. Some even left the company. Those who stayed were the ones who trusted me in our professional endeavors. "Thank you all for staying. We all know how hard you've always worked to protect us," said one of the veteran employees with genuine sentiment. "We were drawn to your business acumen, not your personal life," a younger employee said, making it clear that their respect for me was based on my work. This company, now a small, elite team, felt more valuable to me than my blood-related family. "Yes, everyone here feels the same," Natalie said, patting me on the shoulder. "Now, all I have left is this company and the people involved with it. From now on, I want to dedicate my life to cherishing this company."